What are we talking about today, Ben?
Well, today, Kinsey, we are talking about this feeling of being burnt out and overwhelmed that we get sometimes as business owners. And I think
We've all been there. Right?
Yes. Are you here today?
I'm here yesterday. Today I'm ready.
Yes.
I'm ready for a new day.
A new day. And sometimes we attribute that to just, or have the feeling that we're just incompetent or we're just failing, as opposed to potentially this might be because we're in the wrong role. We've been thinking about this podcast episode for months. Yeah. And we've been procrastinating on it because it's hard.
Because it's a podcast. And
yeah.
It's hard
but
to deliver
we're excited
valuable
to
content.
deliver this because I think we put some thought into this. And also I think it's going to feel really relevant for anybody listening to this podcast because I think it's a common occurrence. And I think we're going to, hopefully this makes a lot of sense. Oh, we can unpack some stuff today. So let's just dive right into it. Particularly just this general feeling of overwhelm, burnout, whatever you want to call it. We determined kind of this just big zoom out overview of like the role that you might have in a business in construction. And I know there's a lot of nuance to this.
Totally. And depending on the size of business, depending on who's listening to the podcast, obviously you're going to have a unique role potentially.
Most of our listeners are solo or small business.
Yep.
So 2 roles, craftsman, salesperson. The craftsman is the person fulfilling the work.
Yep.
The salesperson is the one that can sell the vision. This person knows how to sell.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we were talking about just even some positives and negatives of those 2 roles because, we, like Ben said, we talk to a lot of different contractors who are solo or maybe they partnered up with somebody else. And it tends to be that when we have some of those conversations, it's like pretty clearly one way or another, like someone's leaning salesperson or someone's leaning craftsman, right? And it takes us all like for the world to go around, of course, and to build awesome buildings and spaces and things like that. But I think it's just like, it's a nice call out. This episode hopefully is a nice call out and just provides a little bit of clarity around the benefit of those 2 roles and what's needed to actually like operate a construction company successfully.
Yeah, and don't worry, guys. We will talk about both combined roles.
Yeah.
If you're doing both of those things, we're going to get to that too.
For sure. So what are some positives of a salesperson?
Yeah, so many positives. A salesperson just brings energy and enthusiasm to conversations. There's typically this charisma. People just want to buy from them, right? And I think people that are not salespeople can kind of look at them as a bit of a schmo, kind of
sleazy,
like
salesperson.
right? Just kind of,
car salesmen hate those guys.
Yeah, oh my goodness. They're natural at building trust, closing deals. They have this ability to connect with the person that they're selling to about what it is that they want. Yeah. And they're also in this position of, yes, we can do that for you. Yes, we can. People.
I think it's a unique like gifting or skill or whatever of like, I'm connecting on not only my vision, but like your vision, right? Mm-hmm. Like if I'm selling to a customer or something like that, I'm like, I love what you're building. I love like, you're just able to connect with someone else's vision in a way that it's like, makes people feel affirmed and then they trust you that way. I think that's like kind of why salespeople can be trusted or, in some of those environments of selling.
And they're usually resort to this common phrase, we'll figure it out kind of later. And maybe they're not saying that to the customer they're trying to sell to.
No, yeah.
But they have this mentality.
We've never done that before, but we're totally going to be fine.
Internally, they're thinking this might be the first time we're doing that, but how hard could it be?
Yeah.
We talked about this in
just
the last podcast.
Just a high level of belief,
We'll figure it out. We'll sell it and then we'll do it.
For sure.
How could it be? We trust our team to deliver. Or if you're a solo operator, you'd be like, we'll get back to that later. Or we'll figure it out. I mean, there's a lot of confidence this person brings to the table, right?
Yeah.
So let's walk through some of the negatives. What are you seeing?
Nothing. Just kidding. No, there are a ton. I think one of the biggest things that sticks out to me is I think you kind of mentioned it, but salespeople tend to oversimplify things. They don't necessarily know, especially in construction, right? Like, let's say I bring a client to build a home and you're the fulfillment guy. And I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to just deliver the best quality product and it's going to be just the best finishes you've ever seen. It's talking in generic terms sometimes and like sometimes lack some of those specifics. And they oversimplify. Typically we oversimplify the process of how hard it is to get from point A to point B, right? Which means timelines then are all off, you're not building in enough buffer, things like that. And so I think the oversimplifying the complexity of construction is when you're selling construction projects, I think that's a real tendency for salespeople.
Yep. That back to the we'll figure it out kind of a thing. We'll sell it first. We'll figure it out later.
Yeah.
Maybe some ignorance too of
Yeah.
like construction process. You touched on it, but it's what material specifically best. What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly.
We're gonna whatever it is, carpentry, trim, decks. It's gonna be great. And then when people start asking more specific questions about, well, how about composite decking? Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
What about these kind of no, that makes a ton of sense. And so we can get burnt as far as costs and oversell things and make this overpromise, underdeliver comes out of this salesperson type mentality. These are the negatives. Obviously, they can be overcome with structure and process and understanding, good teamwork or good clarity around the fulfillment process as well. But these are some of the traps, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How about the whole like fire, like constant fires? Like if you feel like you're just constantly putting out fires, you might be more of the salesperson.
True.
Where you're just being like, why doesn't stuff just happen?
Yeah.
I sold it. Why is it, why do people not get stuff done like I want them to get done?
Yeah, so true.
Yeah, because you're just assuming things will happen good.
Yeah, and as a salesperson, you don't know what it takes to actually see the vision of what you're selling,
So a lot of people listening here, you're the owner, you're kind of multi-rolled in the sense of you're the owner of the business, you're the chief salesperson or whatever that is. But you're also on the hook for the fulfillment of it, the delivery of it.
Yeah,
and maybe that's not your passion. As a business owner, a lot of times you got to be that because you realize you can sell, you can deliver the vision. You understand the vision of what people want. You know how to connect the dots, and you have some delivery skills too. So I think that's confusing as well because we're talking about salesperson versus craftsman, and you're thinking, well, I'm both.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into
that,
some of the solo operator side of salespeople and how that breaks down for us.
Yeah. What's that look like from your perspective?
So you're trying to put out the fires through this, like if you're building a team through this sense of urgency, like that needs to be done now. This That's charisma true. You bring to the table of just when it comes to discussion with the client, you're going to be talking about, well, we can solve that. We can take care of it. You're using your charisma, your personality to solve the problem, not operational genius.
Yeah, probably missing details. Budgets are off. Timelines are off.
You can communicate your way out of anything. If that's you, you're a salesperson. And I know many brilliant salespeople.
You're right.
And that's a gift. It's a strong thing. And if you're missing details, budgets, deadlines, this is a salesperson.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
What else?
I think, just there's burnout of being forced into, there could be burnout in being forced into roles or the operational side of the business, something that you're not like excellent at. You could be feeling burnout if you're a salesperson, trying to actually fulfill the operational piece of it. If you're naturally gifted in one area, it can be uncomfortable and hard to spend your time and, have to choose to do something that you don't love doing every day. So I think that relationship, especially if you're solo, that relationship between sales and fulfillment can be a real tension if sales is your passion and then the thing that drives you and motivates you.
Yep. So you're feeling this struggle to deliver. Finding work is never your problem.
Right.
There's always people that want to buy what you're selling.
But delivering.
But when it comes down to deliver, that's when you struggle. Yeah. And so, classic salesperson. So let's not try to unpack this more. I'm sure you guys are thinking more of the positives, more of the negatives, more of what that entails, particularly if you are a salesperson.
And reflecting on things you're great at. Yeah.
Yeah. There's more to it, but that's a high-level overview.
Yeah. What about the craftsman, though?
The craftsman is this person that just gets into the details. They love they take pride in their work. The final product, the finishes, the materials, all of these things. Now, if you're a salesperson, you also have this sense of pride in the delivery as well. But it's about doing that thing if you're the craftsman.
Right.
Like I took something that was nothing, built it with my own hands, got into all the details of how because that's a frustration to you as a salesperson of like the actual in the weeds, all those little details. You're like, there must be a better way. Yeah. There must be an easier way to get to the finish line. Whereas a craftsman's going to say, no, every piece of all of those details, I love that. I love breaking that down and all the complexity of it. And if you're a true craftsman. You're the expert in the tools. You're geeking out on the materials, the products.
The building science.
Yes. All that trade-specific challenge and all these things that work together. You're truly about this building the product, not just selling something that's beautiful. Because the salesperson looks at that beautiful product and says, I can sell that product. Yeah. The builder, the craftsman says, no, at the end of the day, I got my hands dirty and I built it.
Yeah. I think the salesperson, kind of going back to that side, the salesperson looks at the finished product like, oh man, that's so beautiful. I'm going to get so many more customers because of that project, of like, I can win more business because of what that project resulted in.
So true.
Versus the craftsman's just like taking pride and joy in the work that they put in.
Another indicator of a craftsman is they over deliver. Customers will say, well, here's what I would like. And they'll say, actually, what you want is so much better than that. And they're going to say, actually, this is the best product. And we're going to do it for free because we believe so much in craftsmanship and quality. Right. Yeah. Whereas a salesperson say, well, I mean, I can sell that, upgrade.
Yep.
But I'm not going to do it just because I have fun doing it.
Right. Yeah. Which I think is noble, but it's like you just have to be careful because you're really kind of shorting yourself at the end of the day.
So that goes right into the negatives.
Yeah, true. I mean, yeah.
I think the craftsman also, I remember a true craftsman on my team. And I remember him coming to me on a project we were doing where the customer had these very high expectations for quality and for fulfillment. And his standard of quality was not to that level, but he was going to deliver it. But to him, it just felt obscene. It felt like we were taking advantage of somebody almost, of like, why are we doing something totally ridiculous? I remember him coming to my office and saying, this just feels obscene. Like, why are we doing this? Yeah. Like we're overselling something. Yeah. Like we're almost, doing something kind of unethical.
Right.
So that's the tendency of the craftsman to look at everything very much from a, selling is unethical or it's pushy. Like, it's more product driven, craftsmanship driven conversations, not about selling things.
Yeah. And I think too, a lot of craftsmen, because of that perspective of, I don't really want to go out there. I don't want to go sell. I don't want to hear no from people. They just wait for referrals to come, and that can be a negative to like your pipeline of business of like, do you have enough work coming in? Is a really big, I think if you're just waiting on referrals and not hunting business, you are more of a craftsman than you are a salesperson.
100%. Yeah. You tend to undervalue your work sometimes as well. Undercharge. You might be over delivering, undercharging. I've seen this over and over again. Yeah. Where, it's just like, I'll take care of that. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to charge you for that. I'll just do that because you believe so much in this quality product.
Yeah.
You take so much joy into upgrading something and making it better. You can tend to be a perfectionist and overthinker. Yep. That kind of stems into that as well. You don't educate clients on costs because to you, that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's sort of tied. You realize you have to make money, so you need to charge something. But at the same time, your true cost or your true value is not understood by you, so you can't communicate it to your client.
Yeah.
So craftsmen tend to undervalue themselves. Yeah. They also can have a really hard time mentoring other people. That might be a human nature, but particularly craftsmen, because it takes so much work, so much time to be good at something. So the new guy comes along and you're like, this idiot.
He should know how to do that.
Right. I remember, and you discount how hard it was to learn things. I mean, I don't want to remember, let's put it that way. I could go back, how hard it was to master some things, like drywall taping or something like that. It's not a fun process to learn. But when you get good at it, it just happens. Yeah. Your motor skills, everything else just flows.
Yeah.
So I think that's an aspect of craftsmanship type people, where it's just like, get with it, get after it, get it done. You can kind of be a little bit more perfectionist and demanding of people.
Yeah. So as a solo operator, how do you see some of those traits showing up and really like fueling that burnout?
Yeah, because you don't like to sell. And because you don't want to push for things, you don't want to sell things, you have this feast or famine. So a lot of times everybody's referring, you do a big project, 5 people come along, you can't do all the work, and then you're sitting around doing nothing for a while. So it's this feast or famine. You don't have a pipeline, work dries up between jobs.
Yeah.
And you're wearing so many hats, you tend to just feel so frustrated with the administrative side and estimating and all of those things are just misery for you to try to keep up with all that stuff. Invoicing. Yeah. You just rather be out there building. Give me a hammer and I'm happy. But taxes, insurance, all that stuff. Yep. Now, let's be clear here. There is a third role, but we're talking about the 2 primary roles. Yeah. And this is the administrative person. But really, when it comes down to operating a healthy business, you have 2 clear front-end kind of like customer-facing roles, and that is the salesperson and the fulfillment side.
And you're probably not starting a construction company in the first place if you're not one of those 2 roles. Right. Just as an admin person, you're probably not. I mean, like that's an excellent quality and trait, but like you're not. You don't have the gumption and the vision as an administrative role usually to jump out and do something like that.
This ties in with our last podcast where we talked about some of the motivations. of starting a business. And I think from a craftsman standpoint, it's like, I'm so good at delivering something excellent. I'm going to start a business. From a salesperson, I can sell something so good. I'm going to start a business.
And I'll just find the people
It's
to do
not
work.
so much on an admin side. Like I am so good at filing tax returns. Unless you're, a CPA,
Exactly.
you're not going to hang your shingle as a plumber.
Yeah, right.
You're going to help somebody else run their plumbing business.
Yep. That's good.
So,
That's a good call.
you maybe sometimes drown in the details. I think is really what it comes down to with the craftsman.
I think the communication piece too, like the details and then the communication, or it's like, maybe it's even a little bit of both of like communicating the details can be hard, right? Because I think a craftsman is so, like you said earlier, in the details and like has usually very in-depth knowledge about the thing that they're owning, and executing. And I think sometimes that can be a little overwhelming to a customer in terms of like how to even, I don't even know why that's relevant to me, as the customer and those kinds of things. So I think just delineating the communication side down to like being able to hold a conversation. And it's not that you're like unable to communicate with people. Like you live lives and you're real people and you're able, but it's just not the thing that drives you, that fuels you, that you love doing typically.
Right. And it's also because you're spending so many hours building the thing, it also feels like that's a clear ownership, a clear role. And so when it comes down to communication, it feels like that's going to slow me down from getting things done. Yeah. It's not that you couldn't do it. It almost feels like an unnecessary or superfluous thing of you hired me to build your bathroom, not to kind of hold your hand through the whole process. I'm the craftsman, I'm building something. Right. And so therefore you tend to undervalue communication. Not so much to your point that you couldn't communicate if you cared to. Right. You're just thinking, let me in at the Ron Swanson kind of like, I'm going to do the thing. I don't want to talk to a bunch of people. Right. Yeah. I'm the doer. You're going to get it done. Exactly. The less gibberish and back and forth on thing, the better. And then I think also you tend to lose money as a craftsman because you're over delivering constantly. Right. We talked about it earlier, but it's like you're overbuilding past the expectation. Because you care so much about craftsmanship. Yeah, which as you were saying that earlier, it just kind of made me think like if you're a salesperson, it's your job to know what the expectation, like to discover what the expectation of the customer is. And if you don't have a salesperson on your team, you as the craftsman, it's your responsibility to discover what the expectation of the client is. Not your expectation. This isn't your dream home. This isn't your bathroom. This isn't, but like what's the expected deliverable from the customer, you know, in terms of level of excellence. The other point to this, maybe you're not losing money, you're charging too much money because you're trying to deliver something that people didn't actually ask you to do. Is it fair to charge somebody $1 million or build $1.5 million house for somebody that wants $1 million home? No, it's not. Yeah. Right. Because it's like they wanted they had a certain expectation. You over delivered and charged them more money, which would be worth it if they wanted that.
Right. But they didn't want it.
Right.
They didn't sign up for that.
You need to give them agency and that. Back to the communication bit. I think you guys get where we're coming from here from these two roles. You understand this clearly. Like this is not anything new that you don't already think about.
Yeah, I'm sitting here and I'm like, I know which one I am. Like you have a little overlap though.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like forced dual role kind of. I don't know what that is. I'm confused.
So what about the people who feel like they're both? I think that's because so many like solo entrepreneurs are listening to this podcast or small teams. There is for sure overlap in terms of your role of what you have to do today. Like you actually have to set, like if you own a construction company and you're by yourself, you're doing it by yourself, you have to do the 15 things, you have to wear the 15 hats. And so what about the people who feel like, they're a little bit of both of these types, you know, what would you say to them?
It's sort of like any other type of typing, or personality typing or something like that. You can't
send you an Enneagram.
Just what kind of Myers-Briggs are you? Like, I don't know. I mean, like life is more nuanced for sure. And I think you guys are in a spot where you have some sales tendencies. If you're a craftsman or a craftsman, you have some ability to sell. It's not that you're limited to what you can't do the other thing.
Absolutely.
But there's one thing that gives you passion and energy and just when you get up in the morning, you want to do that thing.
Right.
You want to get out there as a salesperson and build a business. Yep. You want to scale a business if you're a salesperson. If you're a craftsman, you're saying, hold the ponies. I do not want to do more work. I want to do excellent work. I don't want to just do more of it. I don't want to be working 80 hours
Quality
a week.
Over quantity.
Yeah. Unless, and for you're thinking about as a craftsman, how do I make more money doing less? Sometimes, and just, how do people value what I'm doing? Yep. Not that I don't want to work myself to the bone. So I think if you're feeling like I don't know what I am, I think it's not that a salesperson couldn't fulfill and a craftsman couldn't sell.
Right.
It's just that there's this sweet spot that just energizes you instead of drains you.
Yeah.
A few clues. If you procrastinate in a certain area, as in the salesperson's going to procrastinate on the fulfillment side.
Yeah.
or there's a part where you really look forward to, let's get after it, get the hammers out and bust this thing out. Or another clue would be, do you win people or do you sort of solve problems? Because you're more operationally focused if you're give me a problem to solve.
Yeah.
And if you're like, no, I can smooth anything over regardless of what the operations are. I can sell anything. I can smooth anything over. You're more of sales focused.
Yeah, makes sense.
So for anybody not thoroughly unconfused at this point, and it's just like I'm just as lost as I ever was. I have no idea what's going on. I think partly you feel an ownership of these roles. You feel like I need to do everything.
Yeah.
And I think where you're at is in the spot where you might be a solo business and you feel like I like that. I like doing all of the things. And what we're bringing up today is the reason why we're even starting this off is a lot of businesses are trying to scale.
Yeah.
And if you want to scale, you need to understand this.
Yes.
So it's like, it's not that you couldn't do all of these different things and do them, okay or even well.
Yeah. Yep.
As soon as you scale, it's like a bad recipe.
Yeah.
Or a recipe off by a little bit. We have this pancake recipe that has the wrong proportion on salt.
Okay.
And if we multiply it times 25, suddenly that little proportion is magnified.
Right.
And now it's just
Tastes
you
terrible.
cannot eat these things. And I think it's the same thing here. Is we can keep something small, overcome any obstacle. The salesperson can mask any fulfillment weakness because they can talk to people. They can communicate.
Can be agile.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
The craftsman can say, I can be busy. I can do work because I'm always so good at doing the work. I'm so close to the ground. People trust me.
Yeah.
They can kind of have this
Put in more
backstory.
hours, put in more like whatever's needed to get the job done, things like that. Yeah.
They can have a backstory. The customer could be looking at you and saying, I love him because he's so great at getting the job done. But man, oh man, I mean, the invoice was slow. The operational side, they need help. And you can mask that though, and they're going to hire you again because they love the craftsmanship.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the salesperson, like the process, like, they were so easy to work with. They communicated so well. I mean, it took us a while to get done. We eventually got there. They communicated well, but it's just like, man, they just need help on the fulfillment, like they need somebody that really is on site and makes stuff happen.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I think that's where we're driving with this is being, if you want to scale the business beyond kind of, I think what this role clarity really matters, right? Is if you're getting projects that are like ending in frustration.
Clients are mad. People are mad on your team, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think there's even like this resentment building up on your team, finger pointing. I think that's a sign that there's role misalignment. Yeah. The confusion between expectations and delivery. This is a sign of role misalignment. And sometimes, not to veer too much off on a tangent here, but I think even within a team, there can be somebody that needs to be paired. If you've grown beyond doing all this yourself and you have a salesperson, sometimes you can have these symptoms because that salesperson is not communicating with whoever's fulfilling the work, or you don't have that person.
Yeah, yeah, good point.
So lots of sales heavy. You're selling lots of stuff, but you're not able to operationally fulfill that really well.
Yeah, yeah. You hinted at the recipe, the pancake recipe, right? And we're talking to a lot of solo entrepreneurs, and then a lot of people who actually want to grow into bigger businesses. They want to, they have a grand vision for how they want their companies to operate. So what would you, can you kind of break down the solo side a little bit, just in terms of perspective? Because I think one of the things that we think that being a solo entrepreneur, solo contractor is an excellent choice in a lot of capacities, and it's not a problem. It's not an issue. I know we talk about growth a lot of times because typically people who are listening to podcasts have a vision for growing to something in the first place, so I think that's a piece of it. But I think what we're trying to say is being solo, building a solo business isn't a problem. It's a choice, right?
Yep.
So what comes with that choice? And like what does the solo contractor face?
Yeah, as you're saying, Kinsey, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's an excellent choice. It's also a de-risked choice because you're eliminating a lot of headaches that can happen. And back to the recipe, you're essentially managing all of these potentially wrong formulas by just keeping it small enough where it still tastes good. You still have the experience you provide is still good. Yep. And I think you're working with your hands, you're controlling the outcome, you're hearing the customer needs. I mean, this is a great choice. Yeah. And I think it's the choice. Yeah. As we'll get into later, until you actually get to the point where you can actually build more of the processes and team to scale.
Or want to.
Yes.
I'm like, I know this was probably 18 months ago that I had a contractor in our office, and he was saying how he was just starting to scale, but he's been solo for I think 20 years. And so he was like bringing on some, thinking succession planning. How am I going to build this to sustain this? My body's getting older, all the things that are real. And he was just saying how his role completely shifted. He's a craftsman through and through. But the moment he brought on a team, the moment he brought on people, he's managing people now. And so his job actually changed. So I think that's like why we're putting this in here anyways, is you got to think about that before you decide to scale. Don't scale prematurely, because if what you love is the craft, you should be really cautious with the way you go about scaling or building a business.
Yeah. We sort of think that there's a ceiling in solo operators in the sense of if you're going to do all of these like management level things, sales, fulfillment, et cetera, kind of instead of owning one role or the other, as in fulfillment or sales, you essentially are putting a ceiling in place.
Yeah.
And we've seen this over and over and over again, where solo operators, or even people with a team, but don't have the operational and sales side split,
right,
are capping themselves.
Yeah.
And I think what it is just, you can't be great at sales and fulfillments consistently.
Yeah.
It's just if you own both of those roles without supporting that, I think you just are in a spot where it's just not happening.
I think one of the reasons why you're saying it's hard to be great at all of the things that go into all the hats, right? That go into owning and operating your own business is time, right? It takes a ton of time to get excellent at something, to become a master at something, And so I think it's not that you can't be good. It's not that you can't deliver in all these areas that we're talking about. You may have, you could be listening to this and have run your own construction company for 15 years and you're like, no, we're chugging along. We're doing great, and it's small and that's awesome. Like that's what we want, but I think it's just the vision. Is the vision aligned with the strategy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you have a ceiling in place and you might be comfortable with that.
Yep.
You bring up time. It's a really key distinction. There's also the mental space. How hard is it to really shift roles?
True.
I mean, for me, in this multi-capacity, multi-dimensional role I have, when you're going from one aspect of work to another, it's hard.
Yeah.
It takes a ton of discipline.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's overwhelming as a business owner. You're like, I'd want to just get out there and have one thing, do it well, and have somebody else work with that other side of the thing.
So true.
So the pairing. So I think that's why this scale piece. And the other thing is the burnout. We talk about burnout, and you might be comfortable just managing burnout for years and years and years.
Yep.
And just saying, well, that's just part of it.
Yeah.
Construction's hard.
Yep.
They
don't call it work for no reason, right? I mean, I agree with that. I think work is hard sometimes. It's not called vacation, right? Yeah. But at the same time, burnout is a little different than putting in the hard work.
Yeah. If you are growth minded, and I think to your point, Kinsey, a lot of people listening to this podcast are growth minded. Yeah. You want to build a strong, scalable business. Right. Even if you're not scaling it now, you want it to be scalable and you want to be able to improve. You want to be able to grow. You want to be able to sort out what are the things that are broken and get better at them. Right. Yep. And so I think we start with don't scale broken. We want to make sure that we sort these roles out before we start hiring, before we start growing, before we start scaling our operations. We want to be able to say, okay, what are the things that aren't working right? And if you go back to the beginning of this podcast and you look at these two distinct roles and you say, I love the craftsmanship side of it. Give me that all day long. Yep. There is a role for you.
Absolutely.
And I think you just need to lean into that where you're excellent. Yeah. This is the area where you're really doing well. Yeah. And then the whole sales side of it, is a strong role as well. If you're a salesperson, you need a project manager. You need the foreman, the lead carpenter, the fulfillment person. Side. Whatever that is in your business. You need somebody that's the strong fulfillment, the deliverer.
Yep. Yeah. Yes. And if you're a craftsman, you need the opposite. Yep. Right.
Yep.
I think I think the thing that keeps coming to my mind is like that sounds simple when we say it like that. Like, oh, you just need a salesperson.
Right. Just find the perfect salesperson.
An amazing craftsman that can fulfill what you're selling. You know what I mean? I think that is really challenging. And I know in the last episode we talked about hiring versus subbing out. And I think there could be some tips in there for people who are kind of on the fence of like, hey, how do I actually scale? Should I hire someone? Or when should I bring on a subcontractor? Things like that. So that's definitely an episode to go back and listen to if you missed that one. But I don't know. When we're saying that, it feels like we're just oversimplifying that.
100%.
But it sounds, I think, especially if you've been solo and operating on your own, like, what does that look like practically to like bring on a salesperson, like to trust someone with your vision, to trust someone with your baby, like that kind of thing. What does that look like? You've done that. So what did that look like for you?
Well, I think one of the big mistakes, if I had to do everything again, day one, I think when you have an opening or you have a need, the temptation is to try to I think the first thing you feel is a undefined need. I'm overwhelmed. You have a feeling more than you have an actual role to fill.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, you have this burnout, you have this frustration, or you have more tangibly, work is not getting done on schedule,
Right.
or you have a problem and you don't necessarily have a role to fit it. And so what you need is help. And so you're saying, who do I know? Who's around me? Who's available to help me,
Yeah,
right? So, I think the thing I would say is don't hire people because they're available. Spouses, friends, cousins. I mean, your spouse might be an amazing pairing or terrible.
Yeah.
Like it might be just because they're there and they support you and love you and care about what you're doing doesn't mean they should be in business with you.
Totally. Yeah. It's a great call out.
And I think, and I know that's for any spouses listening, I think you can have the humility and self-awareness to say, yeah, I'm struggling supporting my spouse because I'm misaligned for the role. I'm there to support them. My best gift is loyalty and belief, not skill. And I think being able to say, okay, you know what we need is not that.
Yeah.
Sisters, cousins, friends, brothers, like these kinds of people, they could be amazing.
Yeah.
But might be completely wrong.
Yeah. Don't look for who you know that's available.
Right. So it's essentially,
It's
you need the right pairing.
Yeah.
And then don't hire somebody worse than you. I mean, it sounds so basic, but it's almost being like, I remember when I started my business, I remember walking to the office one day and say, I should not feel like a genius here. Like I should not feel like the best at everything. And because I know I'm not.
Right.
I hire the wrong people to support me in what I'm doing in a role. It was in the construction context.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm hand-holding all day long. I should have people better than me telling me how the things are supposed to be done.
Yeah.
As for instance, if I'm the salesperson or the craftsman, I need to be paired with somebody that's challenging my assumptions or perspectives and saying, Ben, we need help here. This is how I can help do this.
Which I think is a really good call out, because it's like you're saying, like, you need to find someone who's opposite of you, which we don't like talking to people who are opposite of us. We like talking to people and spending time with people who are like us, And so I think that's a call out just to be aware of, like, if you need someone who has something you don't have. And so typically they're going to be different than you, And so it's like, but that's a good thing. In most contexts, obviously you should be aligned on values and morals and things like there's for sure things that you have to be aligned on when you're hiring someone or bringing on a partner or something like that. But I think from what they bring to the table, it should be different than what you bring to the table. Unless you're hiring for, hey, I'm a lead carpenter and I need another carpenter, then they should have valuable skills.
It magnifies either the problem if they're bad at it. If you're bad at it, they're bad at it, you're magnifying the problem. Or if you're good at it and they're good at it, in the case of carpenter, we're magnifying success.
Yes.
So yes. And I think fractional help can be really important here too, because bookkeeping.
What do you mean by the fractional help?
Well, it means like you don't have to hire a full-time role.
Or just like a part-time or contract out.
Right. Because it would be better to have somebody that's really good fit for accounting that does just that, and you're hiring just that role as a part-time thing, and that's the only thing they touch, as opposed to trying to find a unicorn.
Totally.
Where I need this person, my PM, my salesperson, my accountant. I need to clean the office from time to time, and they need to help me sell from here and there. It's like that doesn't happen. You're not finding that person. Even if you expect them to do it and they do it, they're not doing it well. And you're feeling frustrated with them. You're saying, man, their communication lacks. I don't like the way they do this. I don't like the way they do that. They're not helping me be better.
Yep.
And so if the team around you is worse than you, or you're equal and you're trying to scale, forget it. Yeah. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. Earlier you said don't scale what's already broken, So it's like, hey, don't force it is basically the point of this, scaling when there's confusion on what you bring to the table or what your team brings to the table or what you need, before you scale is worse than actually staying small, staying solo.
And that could be a brilliant solution. Stay small, keep the problem small. I remember when I was operating kind of solo or one or two people, that was so easy. So easy. I mean, you show up to work and you're like, any problem we could solve.
Sounds kind of nice.
Doesn't it? I mean, it's like, wow. I mean, you have, and all the customers know you, have a relationship with you. You call them up and you say, I'm sorry about that. It happened. Oh, that's okay, Ben. Things happen.
It's too bad I'm not skilled at any craft at all.
And I think if you force the scale, this can be business ending. It's expensive. It's frustrating. And if not business ending, I mean, we know quite a few people that have had, near-death experiences with their business or have had failures because they forced scale without having the framework, the foundation to build it. You guys are builders. I mean, you put a lousy foundation up and you build on top of it. What's going to happen?
Yeah, exactly.
So the prerequisite to scale is the consistent fulfillment process. It's the clear processes, the checklist, the scopes, the clear communication, the role definition, and it's like you can scale with success. We know a lot of people have done this well.
Yeah.
It's somewhat the exception instead of the rule because it's hard.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's something it's also so critical, but it can be done in such a way where it does not feel chaotic.
Yeah. That's good.
I think a lot of people listening to this are going to say, yeah, but that's not my position at all. I'm already scaling and I want to scale. I'm in the middle of this. You caught me too late.
And I burn out in the middle. No.
Right. So you feel like,
yeah,
this podcast is for somebody else.
Yeah.
Let's talk about
What
this
about
scenario.
them?
Yeah, because there is a path here. And I think it comes back to reassessing your core strengths. I was just talking to a friend last week and I was thinking about if he took the time, reassessed his core strength, and just leaned into that strength and then and identified where is he dropping the balls, where are things not happening. And then if he said, if there was one thing I did, what would that be all day long?
Yeah.
If you guys are in the middle of scale and you say, this is the thing where I'm in beast mode, this is what I get done, I add the most value. Yeah. This is the anchor role. Don't delegate that.
Yeah.
How many times though do people delegate the thing that they're amazing at and then work in the area where they're constantly frustrated? It's so bizarre, but it happens so often because it can sometimes feel like the most critical aspect of your business, the one you don't want to hand off. I don't want anybody to fluff this one up. I don't want this to get screwed up.
Yeah.
So therefore, I'm going to do it even though I hate every minute of it. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Work in your strength and find the talent to support the area where you don't feel energized, you don't naturally gravitate towards.
You'll be happier.
Yeah. Step 2. Map the work you're still holding. So basically, like, these are the inventory of my current tasks. These are the things that I'm responsible for doing. And then identify, okay, which category do they fit in? This is the thing I'm boss mode at. This is the thing I'm a genius at.
Yeah.
Are they the things I'm okay at, I'm competent at?
I can do it.
So category 2 would be competent. And then category 2 would just be completely draining. Like, I hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 3 categories.
Yeah.
Simple. Genius, competent, or just draining.
Yeah. That's when you procrastinate and don't,
So quick, I mean, it might take you an hour or two, but put that list together of the things you're doing now, the things
it's good.
And where they fit in. And then you start offloading the bottom of the list first, the draining things. Those are the things that obviously not just anybody. You need to find somebody better than you, somebody that actually adds
not
value.
Just competent. Well, if you're draining, maybe competent's okay, but genius level is the goal, right?
Right. Don't replicate the same problem. And I can't
Find
tell you,
someone
and as I'm saying this, I can't tell you how many times I've done that inadvertently just because I make assumptions about somebody's qualifications instead of actually validating them. So don't make my mistake.
Yeah. Well, and if you're interviewing someone, they're selling themselves, So it's like, that's the so hard part about it. It's like,
how many interviews have I done where I say, hey, so what are you good at? Everything.
I can do it all.
I can do it all, boss. You just let me have
you're
that.
You're a liar.
Yeah.
I can't do everything. You can't do everything.
Yeah, I know.
Nobody can do everything.
Yeah, I mean, just because you could
competent
eventually get it done does not mean excellent.
Yes,
I mean, I had one
great
interview where somebody said, I can just do whatever you need me to do, boss. I said, what are you best at? Well, I'm painting and tile.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, and of those two, what are you best at? Probably the tile work. Okay, then you're a tile setter.
Yeah, you're a tile guy. Congratulations.
Just because you put outlets in before does not mean you should. Yeah. So there's.
I think people though they want to people have a tendency to want to help. So I don't know that it's like trying to be deceptive in some of those environments. I think it's just like I'll do whatever you need me to do. Like I will actually do that. I might not be the best person at it. So I think that's the clarifying questions that you're talking about.
And maybe we're talking about something that happens out of scale. Because if you're small enough and you're doing a bathroom remodel and you're like, I'm not the master wiring guy, but I know how to put a switch in and there's one switch to put in. And just because I'm 3 times as long, this is back to the recipe. That's not a bad recipe. It's small enough.
Yep, no, you're right.
And so I think that's what we're talking about too, is if you want scale, if you want production, if you want output that just grows and doesn't have a ceiling, then you need to identify these, or you need to fix these things.
Yeah.
And say, identify and fix. So I think the other thing is, we've talked about it somewhat before, but I mean, this one's personal, but don't hire to fill a seat. Like, I need help, so therefore I'm hiring somebody. You need to fill a role, a clear role. What do you, I mean, just.
I think we've even said this on the last podcast. And like, it's probably one that can be said on every single one just because it's painful for your business and it's painful for who you bring on because people want to add value to the team. They want to be a team player. They want to bring, I think most people do. I mean, maybe some people don't, but I think but the moment they don't feel like they're adding value is when, like back to what you said, like they're pointing fingers or things like that. I think that's just when things go wrong. And so you have to, like, you're bringing on a lot of overhead to your business anyways, the moment you say you're hiring someone. So you got to make sure that it's just the maximum output in the sense of what they bring to the table and the role that they're actually fulfilling. Make sure it's not a project. We talk about that a lot of times. Like we talked about that on the last podcast too, because we were talking about subbing out versus hiring employees.
Mm-hmm.
Do not hire for projects.
Yep.
Sub out for projects.
Yep.
Hire for roles.
Yeah. So that conversation should look, instead of I need help, it should be I need this specific role.
Yeah.
I need a master carpenter.
Yeah. I need you to own this thing.
I need a foreman that does these specific things.
Yep.
I need a salesperson that sells these specific types of jobs and has these specific types of skills. You need to define that your interaction with that role as well. You're going to do this, and I'm going to do this to support you, or you're solo. You own the entire thing, and I expect you to be responsible for the outcomes.
And to report on outcomes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Avoid the half hires, the kind of the helpers, the friends, the utility player of just being like, I don't want you to really own that, but you're going to sort of help me with that. This can work at small scale or when there's really not a definition around what it is you're trying to do. But as soon as you have a role and something that you're trying to scale and grow, you need to be able to say, go.
Yeah.
And until you have that unlocked, you're kind of capping your growth.
Yeah, because I think if you're not actually delegating that, like what you're talking about, if you're not at a point to where you are ready to delegate, then you're just blocking everybody around you, like from actually being able to fulfill their role, their job.
And I think, don't get us wrong either. Assistants can be incredible.
For sure.
Helpers can be incredible. I think it's just when you have a strategic role to fill, don't rely on a helper to fill it. So I think just to make sure the distinction is clear.
That's good.
If you need somebody to help you do something, that's awesome. Hire an assistant, hire whatever it is, somebody to help you do something that you love doing and are passionate about doing and do well and have the capacity to do. Yeah. But as soon as it comes down to being like, no, I need somebody to own something that I'm not good at, it's frustrating, I don't want to do, and you're holding them back by hiring the wrong person, they're just trying to help you do something you're not good at. Yeah. Suddenly,
everybody's frustrated.
Everybody's frustrated, nothing's getting done. Hire slow, fire fast. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a one-liner, but at the same time, it's held true in our business over and over and over again. Yeah,
it's true.
And I think the specifics matter so much. Before you ever hire somebody, make sure that you almost role play that on paper of once this person comes on board, they're responsible for these outcomes. And that actually makes sense and is a reasonable expectation for somebody. Mm-hmm. If that looks like be a unicorn, you have the wrong expectation. But if it's being like, this is clear. Yep. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah. Well, you can reassess and you can come back to it and you can change it and you can shift. Yeah. So that's not a problem. That's called continuing to build a business and developing employees and people. But it should be documented.
I think part of our working relationship has been really very early on, 3.5 years ago when we started Congenius. It was not necessarily like there was a lot of clarity around exactly what we're doing, but the outcomes were pretty clear. Yeah. And a sense of the alignment of what we were trying to do was pretty clear. And so it's like, I think that can work too early on of just being like, here's where we're going. And we're going to sort of have frequent checkpoints to make sure that that's actually working.
Make sure we're aligned. Yeah.
Yeah. And make sure that there's not something, I mean, we've had to pivot at moments.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the other part of having scale already, right? We're talking about people that are already in this moment of like, I'm growing, I've got millions and millions of dollars of work coming in. I'm struggling on the fulfillment side or whatever it is. Like you've already worked so hard to get where you're at. And I think that momentum is sort of a trap because you feel like, well, we just push through. If we just get through this year, next year, or just get through this project, or like it doesn't have to be good. It just has to be done.
Yes.
It's kind of where you're at right now. We need momentum. Next year we can grow more. We can fix something later. You're kind of, your business can just die from this weight of this momentum without alignment. You're just in a spot where you feel so much potential. You feel, if we just get this one job done, but you're struggling at the same time.
Yeah.
I think these are indicator lights of something's off, and you need to zoom out and start seeing, okay, I need to be able to operate at my very best today.
Yeah.
If you're solving the same problems over and over again, how often do we see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're constantly fatigued, you're stressed, you're irritable, like things are just, man, why is this so hard?
It's frustrating.
Yeah, that's right. Operating in that frustration, that sort of just drudgery zone.
Yep.
Your business might look good from the outside, but inside you're just dreading to go to work. If you're there, it's like these are indicator lights that the roles might be misaligned. People are quitting. They're confused. They're frustrated with you. They're underperforming. That might be a situation where you're a strong salesperson and you don't have a good fulfillment
That's
person.
true.
And they're looking at you saying, man, you can sell, but you
You have
suck
no
at
idea
fulfillment.
what you're doing. Yeah.
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 Or you're just not present, to your point earlier, on time. You know, you're out so busy selling and doing that aspect of the work. You're not on the job.
Right.
You're not present
Yep.
there for that. It just
Yep.
might be the fact that you might be capable in both. You just can't do both.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think those are indicator lights.
It's good. You can do less and still be successful, or be more successful in some scenarios.
Yeah.
It's good.
So that kind of just tends to be this sort of reactive mode. Like if you're in that spot, that's an indicator light too. You know, you just deal with stuff as it comes in. Like, oh, you know, that happened again. You just don't have a real plan, don't have a vision. It is fun, I can tell you for a fact, when you have vision, alignment, and teamwork.
For sure.
We've arrived at that now. It's not that we don't have our struggles, but at the same time, like our team here functions like a well-oiled machine. Yeah. It's not that we don't see room to grow. It's not that we don't see a path to make it better, but at the same time, like we're working well together.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
And wish it was always that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been. It's taken growth, and it's taken time and effort and role realignment and all the things.
And I think that's the encouraging piece here. This is a natural part of maturing that, you know, and also a natural part of seizing opportunity.
True. When
you see opportunity and you're like, I'm going to go after that opportunity, and you want to grow to, you know, this is essentially a chance, an opportunity for you to design your business around your role, the right role.
Yep.
So fix your foundation.
Before you.
Bro.
Yeah. Before you scale, or even now. Both, I guess. Right?
Yeah.
If you're small, or before you scale, or
we're in the trenches with you guys on this too. We know how hard this is.
Totally.
Having done it before, running a construction business for 10 years and just recognizing how hard that is. I mean, it's not easy, or everyone would just be working an amazing business, but this is a competitive advantage for you too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're struggling right now, you're already scaling. Define your zones, inventory that work, start creating a plan for delegating it. You're not incompetent. You're not failing.
No,
like, I mean, you guys are doing something very hard. And then the solution, as tempting as it is not more hustle. It's more alignment.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
I mean, what more needs to be said?
Mic drop.
Be honest with yourself too, guys. I mean, that's been one of the struggles. We're delusional as founders. We can do everything. You know, as people that are solos, operators, sometimes you can be like, yep, lay it on me. I can take care of it. And then you start to crack at the seams and everything else like that. I think that's the one struggle we'll always face as business owners or people in leadership, is just being like, we can do it.
Yeah, that's probably why you consistently have to do the assessment. You know, you have to come back and be like, hey, where am I at? Yeah. What can I delegate for? What can I, and it can shift over time.
We are starting a series with this episode. We're going to dive more into this, dive in some more of the administrative side of things, how these roles can interface with each other, or how you can build these
How
roles.
you can improve in some of the roles.
So I'm excited about the next episode. This is our intro to the topic, 2 really high-level roles. Challenges on this, though, guys. I mean, if you see something here of that you're not quite seeing, or if we can help clarify this further, we're going to dive more into this. Yeah. And I think what we hope to gain from it is this well-oiled machine outcome.
Absolutely.
Where we're saying, I love my role. Yeah. I can't wait to get to work in the morning. And everyone else on my team feels the same way.
That's good.
We have momentum. We have clarity. We trust each other. We respect each other. Mm-hmm. And we're growing, and it's fun.
That's good. Yeah. Give us feedback. Leave a comment, because we look at those, and that helps fuel these episodes and make them more relevant to you guys. So
keep it up, guys.
See you later.